Hope you're able to enjoy the barbecue meal we had earlier. Thank you for being here to hear our final session. I wanted to make sure we can. No, I think I'm good unless you guys are having a problem with it. Buddy Martin, I believe, I've been told is in the ICU at the hospital now. He's got pneumonia, I believe, on top of his cancer. So wanted to make sure we added Buddy Martin to our prayer list. And are there any others that we needed to make mention of or add to our prayer list this evening that you guys are aware of? Okay. If not, that's that. If you will, open us in a word of prayer, and then we'll turn it over to Chad.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the day you blessed us with and the opportunity we have to come and to learn more about the media, that we can guard against all the evil that is out there if we can, and make lives better for our young people especially. Thank you for Chad and for his knowledge and the willingness to come and to teach these lessons. We do pray for the church worldwide, and we pray for our family here in Roswell. We're so blessed. We pray for those who are struggling in this whole life, because sometimes it's really cruel. We pray for Buddy and Sonia and their family as he is struggling with the cancer and pneumonia now on top of that, and undergoing chemo. We pray for him. Pray for the others that we have seen in the past that are still struggling. Pray for those who lost loved ones. Lord, we pray for those of our number that are wandering off. Pray that you help us to reach out and to encourage and to bring them back into the fold. We thank you for the many blessings in this life, but most of all, we're so thankful for the spiritual blessings that we have through Jesus and the assurance we have of eternal life. In his name we pray.
Thank y'all so very much for being here. It is difficult to get out on a weeknight, and I do appreciate that, especially the parents with children. I really appreciate you being here. I do understand how difficult that is, especially on a weeknight. And we will be about an hour tonight, and that is it. And we will have a little bit of time for questions at the end. In fact, if you want to stop me at any point and ask a question, please direct those questions to Ray, and he will answer all of those for you, because that's what he told me before. And so, no, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. I would be happy to try to answer those at the time if something sparks that. I wanted to say a few things before. One, did you have any questions about thinking about what we talked about last night? Did anything come up? Did you discuss with your spouse, discuss with your kids, discuss with your grandkids, anything? Any questions that you might have, any comments that you might have before we kind of get started tonight? Okay, so I will take that to say that I covered literally everything, and nothing went unsaid, and everything is covered. I'm the expert. Now, this is a couple of, speaking of experts, if you really want to read, if you're a reader and you really want to read what some experts have to say, and I'll have all of these books on the back table right there beside those windows, right under the circle window right here. We'll have all of these back here when we get done this evening that you can peruse through these. Please don't take them home with you, though, because I do need to use them. This is Wired Child by Richard Freed, Dr. Richard Freed. He is the foremost guy on child psychology when it comes to technology these days. He has wrote a ton of good stuff, and this is just really good. The subtitle of this is Reclaiming Childhood in a Digital Age. And so it's really, really good, especially for those of young kids to read. This is Screens and Teens. This is by Kathy Koch, of course, another doctor. All these guys have PhDs and whatever, but Kathy wrote this. This is an older book. It was 2015, I believe, but a lot of the principles still apply. And so any of these books you have to take with a grain of salt, because they're out of date by the time they get on the shelves anyway, because of all the apps and services and different things that are happening. But this is Screens and Teens, rather, and this is really a really good book. I've got one by Jeremy Roberts called Disconnect, First Century Christians in a 21st Century World. This is by the Gospel Advocate. This is a brotherhood author, so to speak. And Jeremy Roberts wrote that again, and this is a really good one. I got an advanced preview of this book, and it's been really good to have. It's been out for just a couple of years. Let's see. One that is not specific about digital parenting, but is really just good on planning. It's Stephen Glenn and Jane Nelson, both PhDs, Raising Self-Reliant Children in a Self-Indulgent World. The best parenting book I have ever read. It is incredibly wonderful and incredibly applicable in almost every situation. Again, that's Raising Self-Reliant Children in a Self-Indulgent World. Has a lot of applications when it comes to technology, and I think this was written 2 decades ago. It's an older book, but it still stands the test of time. Very, very good. That's Stephen Glenn and Jane Nelson. The last two are by a guy named Tony Reinke, and he had a book that came out a couple of years ago that said 12 ways your phone is changing you. And it's a very, very good read. This was actually a series of blog posts that he made into a good book form. And it turned out to be a super big hit. But he followed that up with a book that just came out a couple of months ago called God, Technology, and the Christian Life. I am halfway through this, and it is changing my thinking about how Christians interact with technology. It is incredible. And so again, these are by Tony Reinke, that's Reinke. And you can, of course, find any of these on Amazon. And if you need to reference the recording back and watch those, these are excellent books. I'll have these back here on the table when we get done, and you can peruse and look through some of those as well. So tonight we are talking about device control. And again, this is one of those ones where I expect to have a lot of feedback from you, a lot of questions. If I go too quickly, if you need me to say something or explain something in more detail, or if you have a question about something that even what we're not talking about, please let me know. Raise your hand, stop me. I tend to I'm like a racehorse. When I get going, I just kind of keep on going. And so you got to say halt and stop me before we get too far ahead. This is some of my, I don't think I have this on. There we go. This is, of course, my information, a little bit different from what I put on there last night. But if you go to chadlandman.com/DPW, that stands for Digital Parenting Workshop. That's got all the things, all the slides that I used last night, as well as tonight, and as well as a couple of other different presentations, handouts and notes, different things like that on there. Download all of it, print all of it off, do whatever you want to with it. It's all free, and you can distribute it as you wish. There's no copyrights on any of it. I've taken all this stuff over the course of the last 8 years from digital parenting workshops, as well as some of my own material, but mostly it's come from a lot of these books. And there's a lot of ideas that I've really molded as far as looking at through a Christian worldview on how we can look at the digital world as well. And again, you can email me, chad@graymirror.com. Graymirror Church of Christ is where I work. And if you don't know how to get in touch with me, if you've lost my contact information, just remember Gray Mirror in Columbia and get a hold of them, and somebody will be able to get a hold of me. And so I'd love to hear from you if you've got any questions, and I'd love to help you out if I can. So we talked about last night, the first two there, why we should be paying attention, and also what we are up against. Tonight, we're going to talk about the how. What kind of tools can I use? Can I take and go at home? What can I go to Walmart and buy? What do I need to know to protect my grandchildren and my children in our home, not just in our home, but beyond as well? Because we know that if our children have devices and they have access to the cell phone network, it's not just in our homes that we need to be worried about, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about primarily tonight. Now, I first want to introduce you or kind of introduce this topic by talking about the differences in the platforms. And I always take for granted how much of a nerd I am, because I just think that everybody knows this stuff, and they don't. And it's just one of those things. I can walk in a cell phone store and go, that runs that runs that, that's that brand, don't buy that phone, right? That's what I can do. When you walk into a cell phone store, what do? That's a black rectangle with a screen, that's a black rectangle with a screen, and that's really pretty, let's buy this one. And that's fine, because that's what they want you to do. But what you need to understand, and again, some of us understand this already, but what we all need to understand is that there are only three major players in this whole space. Remember, it used to be Apple and Microsoft? Well, now it's Apple and Google. And I threw Android in there because I threw Amazon in there. I'll tell you about them in just a second. But what you need to know is that right now, in 2022, Android and Apple are just about at the same level. Do they look at privacy, and do they look at parental controls the same way? They do not. They have very much different philosophies. In fact, I told you last night that I could not recommend iPhones the first few years I was doing this because the parental controls were so terrible. But now they've really come up and been even with all that. I would even venture to say that Android phones are a little bit more flexible. They're harder to figure out, but they're more customizable. You can put better apps on there that do deeper things that Apple just doesn't allow. But you need to understand, Android and Google, which is owned by Google, is a very open operating system. You're going to be able to do a lot more with it. It's going to be a little bit more confusing because of the different brands that those phones have. Samsung, LG, Huawei, all the different brands are going to have slightly different versions of Android that they're going to tweak, and they're going to put their own apps on and things like that. So it's almost like going into the computer store, buying a Lenovo versus a Dell versus an Apple computer. You're going to get different stuff. With Apple, you're going to get the same experience no matter what size the screen is. If it's running the same version of the operating system, you're going to get the same experience across the board. That's the one advantage that they have. So beware of that. Now, do I recommend one system over the other? For simplicity, I recommend Apple. But if you want customization, if you know a little bit more about technology and you can do a lot more, you want more, then go with Android. Is there anything wrong with either viewpoint or either platform? No, there's not. But what I would say is that if your family is on one of these platforms, stick to it. Don't change for change's sake. If you're an Android family, then stay an Android family. Just stay that way. If you're an iPhone family, same thing. Don't mix devices if you can help it. I know that sometimes we have work phones that we get and we can't really control what they are most of the time. You might have an iPhone, the rest of your family has Android phones, and vice versa. But if you can, try to get the same kind of phone or same brand phone across all those things, okay? I do want to stop. Any questions so far? One thing I'm going to say at the very end is that one of the best things that you can do is to not walk into a cell phone store to get them to fix your phone. And I have respect for those people, and I know that they work hard, but they are salespeople first. They're not technicians. I have had great success with calling people on behalf of their cell phone companies, calling their customer service, and getting those technicians to talk through and answer the phone. Walking into the store is most of the time is usually not going to be very helpful. And so again, that's the only thing I would recommend to you. I put Amazon up there is because Amazon in the last 2 years has really started ramping up and selling their Kindle Fire devices and Kindle Fire tablets quite a bit. And they're good devices, especially for kids that are younger than 12. They're very, very good devices, very inexpensive, very kid-friendly, and they're very controllable. They are actually starting to take a slice out of the tablet share as we know it. Apple owns 95% of the tablet space, and Amazon's cutting into that very, very subtly, okay? And it's because they have tablets that are a third of the cost, and they're very, very kid-friendly. So when you think about all that, Amazon is actually a big player in this too. And I put Android-based up there with a limited app store because they do not have the same level app store that a Google phone would have. And they are also based upon Android. So it's like whenever you see an Amazon device, you think, oh, well, that's Amazon running on it. No, it's actually Google Android. In fact, everything that's not an iPhone is pretty much running some type or a fork of Google Android, okay? Any questions? Now, I don't want to get deers in the headlights look on me. You're sitting here going, already fading. I'm like, oh, I don't know what he's talking about. Stick with me. We're going to get to some more interesting stuff. So that lays down the groundwork for us. Now, here's a couple of things that we need to understand, especially for parents and especially for parents of kids that are in high school and have their own device, even if they're not in high school, kids that have their own device on a day-to-day basis. One, and we talked a little bit about this last night, make sure your child has not purchased another device that you do not know about. There are ways that you can detect this. There are Wi-Fi systems that I'm going to talk about here in the future that you can purchase that will alert you to new devices on your Wi-Fi. You can figure these things out, but the best thing to do is ask your child. Hey, do you have a device I don't know about? Hey, is there something you're hiding from me? I mean, just directly confront them about it if you suspect those types of things. Like one of our school administrators back here, or SRO officer, right? He said that there's a black and gray market in almost every single school for $40, $50, $60 broken old iPhones. And just because they can't use the cell phone signal doesn't mean that these kids aren't buying old iPod Touches or old iPhone 6s that are 5, 6, 7 years old. They're taking them home. They're signing in with their Apple ID. They're using them on Wi-Fi only. So again, be aware of that. It was also pointed out to me last night. And this is one of those things, I learned something new at every workshop that I go to. While your 13-year-old cannot walk into a Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile store and sign up for a new account and get their own phone, you know what they can do? And again, this is something that you need to talk with them about. They can go get a prepaid phone. They can get a prepaid SIM card for those things. If they really want to hide usage from you and have their own device that you don't know about, and they can go and they can pay for it themselves. They can get a Cricket or they can get a track phone or whatever those prepaid things are. Those people will sell a phone or a SIM card to any kid. They don't even care. So again, make sure that your kids are not doing that kind of thing, okay? Any questions? Make sure your child knows not to sign into someone else's iCloud or Google Play account. Now, the iCloud account on iPhones and the Google Play account on Android phones. Why is that so significant? Can anybody answer that for me? What do those accounts control on the respective devices? Everything. It has your credit card information. For instance, on your iCloud account, it has all of my wife's photos, which all 62,000 of them, and that is not an exaggeration. The woman takes more photos than Ken Burns, okay? I'm telling you. Has photos, password information, all of the apps you've ever downloaded, all of the, anything that has synced with that, your contacts, has credit card information attached to it. It has everything. Do not let your child or anybody else's sign into an iCloud account or a Google Play account because it controls everything about the device. Now, if you have parental controls set up, like I'm going to tell you about here in a little bit, your child will not be able to sign out of their account or sign into somebody else's account. It will not let them do that. It will lock them out. So very important to mention there. And of course, this last one is kind of one of those duh statements. Make sure you have parental controls set or restrictions set on whatever device your child uses. Okay? Any questions? All right. If I'm not getting any questions, that means I'm covering everything there is to know. Okay? Now, this fancy little graphic here, I just had this idea of, believe it or not, if you look at the historical account of the book of Joshua and the siege of Jericho, Jericho actually had 2 walls. Did you know that? It had a double wall system. And the double wall system was in place because the archers would set foot on the innermost wall. They'd sit up on top of the innermost wall and aim at the guys that were coming over the first wall and just pick them off. And nobody at that point in history was able to breach Jericho's walls until the Israelites came up and they marched around the city, and we know the rest of the story. They blew their trumpets and the walls just fell down because of God, right? So I came up with this little 3-walled structure. You have multiple walls of control and security here. And this looks complicated, but it's really not. And again, you pick one of these things per wall, at least on the first 2 walls. The third wall will go on, and it's the most involved one, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But that first wall is a physical filter on your software or your physical device, on a physical Wi-Fi device in your home. We're going to talk about those here in a second. And I put several different brands up there. OpenDNS is a service that is offered that is a free filter service. You can actually pay for it as well to get more features. TP-Link and Eero are different brands of routers that you can buy at Walmart, Sam's Club, Target, any of those types of places like Amazon as well. Wall number 2 is where it gets to the software that you would put onto your device. And I used to have this big, long laundry list of apps. And if you type in parental control apps on the app stores on any of these phones, you'll come up with 13,000 of them. And I quickly learned that all parents want me to do is just tell me which one to get, right? And that's fine. Most of the time, though, and I don't know if this has a laser on it or not, it does. You can use, and it doesn't work on the screen, how about that? You can use Screen Time or Family Link. So Screen Time on iOS or Family Link on Google Android. And by the way, when I say iOS, I mean iPads and iPhones, Apple devices. Family Link is an app that you can actually use on your iPhone as well, but you can also use that on your Google device as well. You're not going to be able to use Screen Time on that because it's not an Apple device. So you start with those, and that's what we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But these 2 apps I have up here we're going to talk about in a little bit are Life 360 and OurPact, OurPact. Those are also good ones to think about and use. I do not put Bark on there because I have not personally tried it yet. And so Bark, I've heard, is completely wonderful, and I would invite you to go try that as well. It really does a lot of AI, artificial intelligence type stuff to really nail down the behaviors of your children and watch everything that's going on their screen. So it's really, really good. But then wall number 3, and you can see in there, app by app audits. And this is where you get into just the needle in the haystack. You just have to go inside of if you allow your children to be on that app, you need to go inside settings. You need to go inside the settings on the app. You need to check and see everything that's going on. You need to make sure they have a private account. You need to make sure it's not using location. All those different checks. Every app that your child is allowed to use, you need to go through those app by app audits. You need to just give it an audit every 6 months. That's time consuming and terrible, but it has to be done. Okay? Any questions? Yes, sir.
I was going to add, I have found with my kids who went app by app, sometimes it's not in the app for the settings. You actually have to get on a computer and pull up their website to get to actual parental control.
Perfect example of that I'm going to talk about at the end of the talk this evening is Netflix. You can't actually change the settings for Netflix. You can change a couple of things on the app itself, but it's going to kick you out to the browser or kick you out to the website to log in there and change things there as well. And again, that's not confusing, but that's one thing that you need to know about Netflix. Netflix actually has pretty decent parental controls, and we're going to talk about that. I'll give you a guess as to who doesn't have great parental controls. They're on the screen. So anyway, we'll talk about that here in just a few moments. Any other comments, questions? Okay, let's keep moving here. Now, this is one of those situations. OpenDNS is one of the more technical things. And so I guess you can tune out just a little bit. If you don't have any interest in doing something like OpenDNS, then that's fine. But I always want to include this because OpenDNS is extremely powerful. It's very easy to set up on any device or any router that you have at your home. So that means if you put it on your router, if you change your router's settings at your home, anybody that accesses that is going to run up against this firewall, this filter. And also, you can actually change it on the phone or on the device itself, and they're going to run up against that when they're out at the mall or out at a ball game or anything like that. All OpenDNS is a really sophisticated open source filter that lots of organizations use. You've probably been to one of those organizations or stores today that used OpenDNS. Target uses OpenDNS on their Wi-Fi system in their stores. Graymere, we use OpenDNS. We use the sophisticated, I think, $90 a year version to where we can see traffic as it's happening on that. And believe me, I don't want to give anything away and I don't want to violate anybody's privacy, but you would not believe some of the things that people search for and the websites that they try to go to during a worship service. It is absolutely bananas. So again, if you don't have something in place here at the church, if you don't have something in place at home, this is the very least you could do, and it's free to use. If you're a parent, you can get you can pay $20 a year. That's nothing. That's less than $2 a month, $20 a year to get history and whitelist mode. They will email you a browser history of every device that you have on every single week or however frequently you want it. Very, very helpful to use. If you go to opendns.com/home internet security, you can see exactly what they offer for home security. Again, they do a lot of big businesses, but they also have a home version as well. Any questions about that? Again, this is not the only alternative. This is a little bit more technical. And so if you're inclined, you can use that. A simpler method and just as effective is to get a device in your home. Now, I talked with a couple when I was eating dinner about how they live in an area here where there's one internet service provider. How many of you live in an area where you have one internet service provider to pick from and that's it? Okay? How many of you have the choice to pick between different internet service providers? Okay. And how many of you have the choice, if you know, do you use their equipment or can you purchase your own? And so again, that's the determination here. If you cannot purchase your own equipment, if you have to use theirs, like some services require, I know AT&T is one of them. And what was the one that you said? What was yours? Windstream Connect. Okay. And so if you have that, then you kind of are limited to what you can do. Okay. But if you have an internet service, like we go through a co-op at home. I actually don't have one of the big internet services like Spectrum or AT&T at home. We had go through Columbia Power and Water for our internet. It's really fantastic. But they hook the wire up to your house and go, hey, it's up to you after that. And I love that, being a technical person myself. So because I can purchase my own equipment. So if you can purchase your own equipment, I would highly encourage you to look at some of the ones that we talk about here today. So we use Eero at home. And again, this is a physical Wi-Fi router, piece of equipment that you would buy. You would replace your existing router, and it's going to probably give you better coverage and better speed because if you haven't replaced your router in the last 5 or 10 years, then routers have come in a really, really long way. And not to mention that, they give you all sorts of different parental controls. And so I was using the example to the couple that I was talking to at dinner. I pulled up my app on my phone, and I was able to see exactly which one of my children were online in my home at that point. And I knew that 2 out of 3 of them were online. I knew what device they were using, and I knew what website or what thing they were accessing. And turns out they weren't accessing anything because I don't allow them to see anything. And you can set all sorts of different blocked apps, blocked websites, blocked this, blocked that. You can pause, like here on the screen, you can pause that internet access for any device on the network. So what happens and what's going to happen here in about, so it's 6:30 here, but it's 5:30 there. So at 6:30 at home, what happens is it's almost like every single night. The internet stops working. So the video that they're watching starts to do the little looping thing, and it says, oh, it can't connect. And of course, that is when you hear the weeping and gnashing of teeth. And it's like, and that's the good thing. It's like, okay, time to go get in the bath, and it's kind of this nice little transition of, the internet stopped working. And then my kids have not been able to figure out that I can control that yet. And they're like, oh, it's time to get in the bath. Oh, the internet stopped working. Yeah, I know. Let's go get in the bath. Let's go get in the bath. And it's this good kind of transition time to where they know it's time to get in the bath. It's time to start bedtime. And so again, if you want to do that with any of your children, no matter how old they are, if you want to pause that access, You want to pause that device. You can do that. It's actually very, very good. And so again, I would recommend Eero. A lot of the other routers do the same thing. TP-Link, I know Linksys has this kind of a similar system. They're all really, really great. Yes, sir.
Can you select which devices the internet stays on? I want internet?
Yes, you don't have to pause the internet blanket for everybody. You can actually, I was looking at my device the other time and I was thinking, if I pause the internet right now, I would get a phone call from my wife in about 2 minutes. Like, what did you do? And she knows that. And we have used it as something like, okay, you're not listening to me. You're not paying attention. I'm going to just pause your internet and you go to your bedroom and think about this. Okay. That's what we do all the time. And so, yes, you can pick exactly what device. You can pick down to the website, down to the service. You can block if you say, well, you know what? No more Disney Plus for you this whole month. Boom, blocked. You can do that. You can get any kind of service. They have like 43 different services that you can pick from. It's very cool. Any other questions? Again, you want to be able to control everything in your house. This is all about control. You master the technology. It's not that difficult, actually. Yes, sir.
I just like, let's go ahead and test that, go ahead and turn it off and see if Dwight calls.
No, we're not going to do that.
I was thinking, once your kids figure this out, they're going to be the smartest kids they have.
Well, one of them has figured it out, and I'll give you a wild guess as to which one it was. But he has figured out that if he can find my phone and he actually figured out my password on my phone and he went into the Eero app, unblocked something so that he could get on it. And he was putting the block back on it. And again, it was something like nickjr.com. I mean, it was harmless. But again, I didn't want him using that service and I didn't want him on that website. And sure enough, I'd caught him. And he told me how he did it. And I was like, you are so stinking smart. And so, yeah, it's already happened. So it's already here.
I do have a question about, you were saying, that we'd be surprised when people were at during church. So you're saying we can control what people pull up here?
You can control what you don't want them to look at. You can block them from potentially seeing, I would say 99% of what you don't want them to see. Now, there's no perfect filter. OpenDNS is not perfect. It's very good, not perfect. And there are workarounds. And so if your child figures out workarounds, then that's another thing that you've got to deal with as well. But you can prevent them from seeing it, not necessarily, telling them, controlling what they see. You know what I mean? Any other questions or comments? Now, I know that, this may or may not get confusing for you, but this is actually, it's super simple. Eero has an app that before you even plug it in, it will tell you step by step, you plug this here, and then should have this light turns blue and you go, okay, and then you log on to your account. It's super duper simple. And a lot of these others like TP-Link and Linksys, they have the similar kinds of things. It's absolutely wonderful time for internet routers. Okay, so if you can use your own at home, and I would do some checking about that, just a quick call to your internet service provider, you should be able to say, hey, can I use my own stuff? In fact, you might be paying $5 a month for a router that you could just buy a router for $80 and not have to pay $5 a month anymore to rent it from them. So again, it may even save you money in the long run. Okay, any questions, comments? All right, we're going to keep on rolling here. Now, what I said about apps and putting an app on your phone, start with, if you can, Google Play Family Link and then screen time for Apple devices. That's a good bedrock to start with. Most of the time, in fact, I do not use at home for my little boys, other than the Eero device and the Eero app, I don't use anything extra to control their iPads and their internet experience. I use screen time to block it on their devices, and I use a combination of the internet filter that I have with Eero, and that's it. Now, as they grow and as they get more mature and as we give them a few more freedoms and things that they can do, it's going to become more complex. And so you will probably have to go to something else other than screen time or Google Play Family Link, but that's a really good place to start. And we don't have enough time in the world to go over every setting. because there is a million settings. If you go into the different categories that especially Apple has, they have different settings for different things. They have different blocks for different things. You can block websites. My boys don't even see the internet browser icon on their iPad. I turn Safari off, which means that any app that they choose, like if they've got one of their kid apps and it wants to access the internet, it doesn't let them do that either. And so if you disable the internet, if you disable Safari, it should disable it on every other app too. Yes, sir.
You may be fixing to mention this, but when you go to that, where you're selecting apps and screen time, you gotta make sure that you turn off install new apps.
Yes.
And delete apps.
Yes.
Then it'll just install some other browser.
Right, and you need to make sure to uncheck there. On iOS, Apple devices specifically, all there is just a little green button. It's either gray or green. And if it's green, that means they can do it. If it's gray, that means they can't do it. And so all you say is, you just say, I don't want them to be able to install new apps. I do not want them to even delete new apps. I don't want them having any kind of control. Every time my child wants to install something or wants a new app, I have to obviously look at what it is first. But if I know it's okay, what I have to do is I have to go inside of screen time. I have to put my screen time passcode in, because it's not as simple as just turning it off. There's another passcode that has it on there. Then I have to go inside that. Then I have to disable installing or deleting apps. And then I have to go back to the App Store, and the App Store icon pops up. It doesn't even pop up for them. They can't surf the App Store and look at apps. But it pops up for me. I hit the App Store. I go and update all their apps. They can't even update their apps because it doesn't allow them access to the App Store. And so I have really just locked down their devices. And so yes, that's a very, very good point to make as well. You don't want them installing anything that you don't want. There is a feature of family sharing for Apple devices that's really neat. So if you have an older kid, you can enable it to where they can request to download it from you, which is really cool. So no matter where you are, if you're upstairs or if you're across the state, they can say, hey, I want to download this app. And you can, on your phone, it'll pop up a notification. You say, oh, okay, that's fine. I know he wants it. And then you can let them download it. And you don't have to go through all that. So again, we'll talk about that here in just a minute. But yeah, that's a very good feature. Okay, any other comments? Questions? Yes, sir.
I want to let you get to this because I imagine you are. When you have all these controls and as you sort of graduate your kids to the next level, there's always that aspect of you want them to, how do I say that? You want to leave them enough rope to hang themselves. I mean, you want to give them an opportunity to have the freedom to make some mistakes.
To build trust.
To build the trust. And
right.
That's where we are. I've got a 14 and 11-year-old, and she's looking at me half of the things you're saying because we're doing these, and it's trying to give them some freedoms, but also not allow them to make a big mistake. So the training needs to be there, but also the control for all the things that you need.
Absolutely. And it's going to be one of those kind of scales where right now in my life with a 10, a 5, and an 8-year-old, the scale is like this. I've got maximum control and minimal freedom. Okay. And then it's eventually going to start doing this. And you're going to give them a little bit more freedom, a little bit less control as you build that relationship and trust with them. Now that's getting a little bit more into the meta part of this, is thinking about what kind of relationship does your child or grandchildren have with that technology? How mature are they? Do you know your child better than anybody? You know your grandchild better than anybody. What are they capable of? Have they intentionally shown you that you can trust them or that you cannot trust them? Because I hear from several parents a lot that say, you know, we've got her on, she's 18 years old, but we've got her on a phone that literally she can just call and text because she's made so many mistakes and she's lied to us so much. Or I have parents of 16-year-olds to where we say, we've been checking their phones since they were 10 years old. We've been checking their devices since they were 10 years old. They've never given us a reason, so we give them a little bit more freedom. So again, it's really you have to be situationally aware with that. And that's a very, very good thing to mention as well. And it really is all about building that relationship. Because let me tell you something, when your child or grandchild turns 18, that's kind of the end of the road. Now, I know they're still your children. My mom tonight will text me on the way home. Are you home yet? Mom, I'm 40. Okay? That's what she does. That's what mothers do, right? But at the same time, your children never stop being your children, but at 18 years old, what happens? They're probably going to move out of your house. They're probably going to go to college. They're going to move on and do something else. You're not going to be that full-time parent anymore. And for we have to parent what David Shannon said. This always stuck in my mind. We have to parent with the end in mind. And the end largely comes when they transition to adulthood at 18, 19 years old. And your children are going to see, are they going to be prepared when they get to college to see the things that they did? Remember the couple that I talked about that were so proud of their 17 and 18-year-olds never having phones, never being on any type of technology or social media? Remember that? If their kids go to college, oh my goodness, what are they going to see? It's going to be like the prodigal son who went out and partied, right? They're not going to understand how to control that. So what we want to do is we want to start as early as we possibly can with all this. And we want to teach them good digital things to do, good things to do in their digital life. And first and foremost in parenting. You got me off on a tangent. That's your fault. So anyway, good tangent, I think. But any questions or comments to add on that? Again, have a plan. If you're a grandparent, have a plan for your grandchildren when they come over. Talk to them about these things. If you're a husband and a wife raising a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, an 18-year-old, it's never too late to start. Have a plan. That's all there is to it. We have a plan for finances. We have a plan for college education and savings for that. We have a plan for retirement. We have to have a plan for digital parenting as well. We have to. It's not optional. Okay, tangent over. Sorry. Let's keep moving. Here we go. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
So your child is 13 and they're not, Apple kicks them out of child law. So the sharing that they have their own Apple ID, how do you get back into control?
So you have to have access to their Apple ID, first of all.
Yes.
And you have to have their username and password.
Yes.
And then first thing you do is go change the password. In your situation, I'm not talking to necessarily anybody else. In your situation, go change their Apple ID password to something that you know. That way that they can't make system level changes on those things. Okay? And that will enable you to do a lot of different things under their account. Normally, I would recommend okay, let me back up here. Normally, I would recommend having that separate account for your children when they get to 10, 12, 13 years old, because it allows you to have more control. Now, in her case, she signed her children up for a child's account. Well, Apple, because I don't know what these engineers in Cupertino are thinking. I don't know what the engineers in Mountain View are thinking either. But they think that, when they turn 13, suddenly they're responsible. And suddenly they can figure all this out and they deserve privacy. That's how these tech companies think sometimes. 13 years old, it's fine. No, that's not fine. In fact, that's one of the worst times is to give a 13-year-old complete freedom over their device. Okay? So if you set up on an iOS device specifically, in her situation, and again, this is very specific, if you set up a child account, it is going to disable all those parental controls at age 13. Why? I have no idea. So therefore, I would recommend against a child account. Now, if you have done that and you know that your child's account is coming up to age 13 soon, then you can prepare for that and have other things, kind of parental controls ready and waiting for them. I think, though, changing the password is probably a good interim solution, but we can talk a little bit later about more permanent solutions. So again, special case with her, but again, something to be aware of. Yes, ma'am.
I use that.
Yes. And that's part of family sharing. Ask to buy is what she's talking about. It's very, very good. Very.
And I did learn the hard way that before you ever started using Ask to Buy, anything that's been downloaded is still in the cloud.
That's correct.
And they can add that back, so that had to be, that was a lesson I had to learn. That anything that's downloaded previously before the Ask to Buy goes into place, they can
Right.
without being able to.
And again, with years and years of downloads and years of history and things like that, you really don't have an option to change that Apple ID or make a new one, or change the Google Play ID and make a new one, because it gets very confusing very, very quickly. And so, yeah, what we did is for my 3 boys, they have one account. All 3 boys have one account, and that way we can control everything about that account. And I can specifically think and point settings at different devices using my internet router. But here in a couple of years, I'm going to have to rethink that. And eventually, all 3 of my boys are going to get their own Apple ID that I will control, at least until they're 18 years old. So, any questions? Okay. This is just a kind of a screenshot of screen time. Screen time's default time to give you the notification on how much you've looked at your screen is ironically Sunday morning at 9 a.m. And it's really funny, as we're singing the opening song to church, I get a little thing on my watch that this is how much of a worthless human being you are for looking at Instagram all week. And it's just really hilarious. And it's hilarious because it's tragic is what it is. But you think about that setting this time, you can actually see exactly what you have been spending time on. When I talk to kids about these subjects and different things, I take a different direction, of course, than I do with adults. But I challenge them by saying, if you go to screen time, use it for a week and then see the app that you use the most. And then delete that app for a week and see what happens. Delete the app that's at the top of the list for a week and see how that changes your mindset. I deleted Facebook for 40 days. It changed everything about how I use my phone. It's that powerful. It's kind of crazy, the grip that these networks and these applications have on us. Another thing that's really neat is when I know that I don't want to be distracted by my phone, I know that I don't want to be looking at my screen a whole lot, and this is a bonus. It's not on the slides, but this is a bonus. There's something on Android phones and iPhones called black and white mode. I can make my phone look like it was made in 1955, and there's no color on it whatsoever. And the color, you would be amazed at the bright and beautiful colors that these amazing screens have. You would be amazed at how disinterested you become, how quickly that happens when it's black and white. And so when I go on vacation, or when I'm on a family weekend, or when I have family time at home on nights, I'll turn it on black and white mode sometimes, because I'll just be able to check something and go, okay, whatever. And I just don't want to look at it that much. It's actually really funny. It plays a trick on your brain. I call it the slot machine effect, because a slot machine does not look boring whatsoever. I don't know if we probably don't go around casinos a whole lot around here. I know all of us, but if you know what a slot machine looks like, it's going to have bells and whistles and tingles and tweaks and the lever and the action and all the lights and the colors and different things like that. There's not a slot machine in the world that's brown and that has one color and doesn't make any kind of sounds. And it's the same thing with your phone. And so again, if you want to be less addicted to your phone, there's tools that you can use to put your phone on black and white mode so that you don't look at it. One thing that terrified teenagers when I told them that, they were like, I don't want to take photos and then be black and white. And I'm like, it takes regular photos. Just chill out. It takes regular photos. It doesn't take black and white photos. It's okay. So anyway, just a bonus points there. Let's keep going. I've got a cheat sheet on my website for this. And again, this is just a very, very simple thing that you can kind of do, especially going into iOS. This is, of course, iOS 12 and later. I believe we're on 14 now. You can just go through all of these different things. And again, we don't have time to sit there and go through every single one of them. But you just go through settings and screen time. You set that screen time passcode. You can go through Touch ID, and now it's Face ID. Did you know with Face ID, you can actually set up what's called an alternate appearance? And really what that means is parent's face, right? And so you set up your child's face on it, and if you set up your alternate appearance, you can put your face on it, which means you're never locked out of your child's phone. Like the mother that came to me several years ago, where her daughter locked her out of her phone. And she said that, and I just shook my head and I said, there would be a dead child in my house, because she would be dead if they tried to do that to me. And it was a very, very precarious situation for her. You don't ever want to be in the situation where if your child says no and is being defiant to you, the parent, where you cannot access the device that potentially has something on it that could get them into a lot of trouble or you into a lot of trouble. You don't want to be in that situation. Okay? So again, set up that alternate ID. If you still have a fingerprint reader on the phone, which those are quickly going away, but if you still have a fingerprint reader, you can actually set up to 5 fingerprints on a phone. So one of those fingerprints can be yours, one of the fingerprints can be your wife's, one of the fingerprints can be your son or daughter, all sorts of different things. There are ways to get around these certain things. Okay, any questions on that? You just keep going down through here. Game Center is something that's not really a thing anymore, really. A lot of these games that kids play use their own networks now. They don't necessarily use Game Center. And again, just make sure that they're not, just like it would be for Xbox or PlayStation, make sure that they know the people that they're playing games with if you allow them to play games online with people. Don't allow them to play with Yahoo in Norway or whatever, that somebody they don't know, okay? Make sure that they know who their friends are on those games. And then it says just audit social media accounts, their access. Twitter does not need to know your child's location 24 hours a day, okay? There's apps like Snapchat and TikTok that want your child's location. They don't need it. The only app that needs your child's location is what? Maps, right? That's the only app that they should be able to use that should be able to use their location. Now, when we get into parental control apps, you can give access to those to access location as far as where you can see where they are, okay? But very few apps actually need to know your child's location, because that's the way that the people that want to harm your child, that's the way that they hunt down kids now. They don't hang around in the bushes at the playground. They hang around the apps and the services, and they see where they find a trail of every single one of these recent ones where a child molester has tracked a child. It has been through an app or a service like Twitter or TikTok or Instagram, where they have logged their location everywhere they went. Or they've done it unconsciously. They've let that app log that location. And so again, every time that little warning comes up on your phone and says, hey, this app has been tracking your location, do you want to keep that enabled? Say, no. You do not need to give them more data. And if it's one of those things where it's like a weather app or a maps app that you need location, then you can figure that out. Okay? Any comments, questions? Family sharing on iOS, and there's a very similar thing on Google as well. Family sharing is actually really neat. You can actually get organized with all of your family. You can share apps. You can share purchased music. Sometimes you can even share subscriptions. It's actually really helpful. What I really like, of course, is what we've mentioned before, is that your child can request an app to buy. And so even if it's a free app, they say it will still send a notification to you to give the yes or the no. And you can always just say no. If you don't want to look at what that app is at that point, or you're too busy, you can always just say no and then say yes later, okay? So again, that will notify them. You can reply from anywhere. It doesn't matter if you're in the same Wi-Fi network or in the same state. Find My iPhone is one thing that, and again, there's a similar type service on Android phones as well through Google Play Family Link. You have to go and enable and download the Find My app. You have to do that in order for it to work. There was an instance where we were on a mission trip to Arizona. We had our big church group there, about 50 of us, and a girl was playing basketball in the middle of an Indian reservation on a basketball court. No lights, nothing around. She lost her phone. And so I said, well, just pull it up on Find My iPhone. And she goes, well, we didn't enable it. Enable Find My iPhone. Okay, go to Find My iPhone and make sure that you can trace where your child's device is, if they lose it, or if you just want to know where they're at. Now, there are more sophisticated apps that we're going to talk about, like Life 360, that will actually tell you a more precise location. It will tell you how fast they are driving in their car or whatever car they're riding in. And so that's very, very helpful as well. So again, you have to enable location services on Find My iPhone. This is it. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. What's that? Yes, ma'am. And that's what I'm going over right here. It's Google Play Family Link. And so you can actually trace their location as well using this. And you can actually use this right here. You can connect to your child's device. And again, this is available on Android, but also available on iOS as well. I don't know of a lot of people on iOS that use it, but it's mainly used for Google Android phones. And so you can do all these sorts of things. Teachers can recommend apps. So if a teacher has a Chromebook and they recommend a Chrome app or different things like that, you can usually download them through your phone to your Chromebook, all sorts of different stuff like that. This one right here, you can see their device location. You can actually lock their device to where the only thing that they can do is send and receive phone calls from you. So it's really quite fantastic. This is a free service that is offered by Google as well. You can set screen time limits a lot like you can on some of the other applications through screen time on iOS as well. Really quite fantastic. By the way, let's get a quick survey. How many iPhone families, iPhone users do we have in here? Okay. And Android? Okay. It's about 70-30 like it normally is. So usually we have more iPhones in America. I don't guess because we got more money or something. I don't know. But there's always more iPhones in America. But guess what? That is absolutely flip-flopped in the rest of the world. It's mainly Android. 80% of the world is 80% Android almost all the time. When you go to other countries, when you go to especially Latin America countries, it's all Android. And so that's just a little factoid there. Life 360 is one of those third-party apps I want to talk about. And third-party means it's not made by Apple, it's not made by Google, it's not built in. This is one of those that you have to download and you have to pay for. And before you say, well, I get nickeled and dimed to death and all this other stuff like that, these are $3, $4, $5 a month. How much would you pay if something happened to your child? How much would you pay to get them out of it? And so again, is it worth the price of an overpriced cup of coffee every month to try to protect your child? So again, don't gripe about $3, $4, $5 a month. Life 360 is basically Find My iPhone on steroids. It gives you a ton of features. How many of y'all use Life 360? I've heard a lot of people that use this. Do you like it? Okay, it gives you a lot of good functionality, especially if you pay for it. So I know some people that have never paid for it and they still use it, and it's wonderful. And so it's pretty great. You can get location history, crime alerts, driver monitoring. They even offer a service of roadside assistance. So if you're ever worried, if you don't pay AAA for the thing every month or every year or whatever, they offer something like that. And so you get a free 7-day trial of the Plus service that they have. That may have changed. I believe it's $4.99 a month or $3.99 a month for like 2 or 3 different devices. Very good service. The other service that I like, and especially for younger kids, especially middle school age kids, is HourPact. And really, this lets you monitor your child's phone. And one of the really big strengths of HourPact is monitoring text messaging. And that's something that's really difficult to do on iPhones in particular. It's actually quite easy to do on Android phones because they just give you more access. But on iPhones, it's a little bit hard to do. HourPact has worked it out to where they can do that on iPhones. And again, if that's something that you're worried about, you might want to check out HourPact. Okay? Are there any other apps or services? Bark. Bark is one that I've used, and Bark is a little bit more sophisticated. Bark looks at what your children are typing on the screen and actually screens it for all sorts of different things. Violence, sexual content, bullying, all sorts of different stuff, and it'll send you warnings about it. You can put it on Chromebooks, you can put it on Windows computers, you can put it on Android and iOS devices. It's actually very, very powerful. And so again, just think about that. Bark is actually a really good one, and I'm getting ready to add it on there. I have to try it myself first, though. Okay? There's a couple of screenshots here from HourPact. It's got a really quite neat, simple interface. Whoa! My clicker just went crazy. Okay. Probably knows I want to speed it up here. Okay, here we go. It's free to use. I wanted to talk a little bit about Amazon Kids, Kids Plus. It used to be called Free Time Unlimited. If you have a younger child, ages 3 to 10, 3 to 12, in that age range right there, Amazon Kids Plus is actually really good. It links to your Amazon account. When you sign into a kid account for Amazon Kids Plus on a Kindle Fire tablet, it gives them a completely different interface. I honestly wish iPads did this, but it gives them a kids type interface. It allows them, at one point we had this for Jacob, and we decided to get something else just because he wanted to do different stuff. He wanted to make movies and things like that. But it will actually allow you to do a now first work first, play later feature, to where it makes them do like homework type stuff before they can play. And you can set a timer on that. And so again, if you have a small child, and you can make them do math problems for 10 minutes and then play on their device, then that's actually really cool. It's $2.99 a month, I believe. Most of the time, if you buy a Kindle Fire device, the kids version, it will come free for a year. And so again, it's very, very good for small kids. I would highly recommend it. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Do you have any experience or an opinion on Net Nanny and Coach?
So Net Nanny and Covenant Eyes were very big back in the Windows computer days. And Covenant Eyes specifically could log every keystroke at one point. It could log every single thing that you were doing on that computer. They haven't kept, I don't know, do you have an experience with them recently, or? And it's a good service to use, especially if you're doing something widespread like school stuff. But on an individual basis, they kind of faltered for a while and didn't really keep up with the devices and the times. That for a long time, they didn't even have anything for iPads and iPhones. And so I kind of discounted them. But they were really big back in the early 2000s, late 90s. They were about the only game in town when it came to that kind of stuff. They just didn't really keep up with the devices. I assume they offer a good service now, but I have not tried any of those recently. But I'm going to write that down and check it out. Any questions? Any other things to comment on? Yes, ma'am.
All right, so different, like the ERO and like BARC.
Okay.
So is BARC just like the arrows on steroids because you're monitoring every little bitty piece?
So-
Or are they about the same thing?
So, no, actually not. BARC and ERO are completely different. ERO is an internet filter. It's going to be a firewall, an internet filter that's going to filter all the traffic on your home network. More specifically, it's going to filter traffic to whatever specific device you set up in the app. And it's really just an internet filter, and you can turn and turn off different services and things like that. BARC is more of an artificial intelligence program that will actually run all the text that it sees on the screen, if I understand correctly. Every single thing it will put it through its scanner. And frankly, it's voodoo. It's magic. I have no idea how it works, and I don't know how they get it to work on iPhones, because that's one of those things I would absolutely say is, well, Apple wouldn't allow that kind of thing because they're really strict on that kind of stuff, but it works. And I've heard from a lot of people that it works really well. And so it does something. You download a client or something to it, and it analyzes everything that's on screen. And so again, that's one of those things where it's going to send you a report. It's going to be a lot more in-depth and detailed. And so
If someone sends text and they're just joking, then it's bullying regardless of it.
it will flag it, and it will send you a notification. Absolutely.
So it'll do, that's what I was gonna ask, does it do it right then, or is that something you have to go in?
Now, yeah, again, it's just like any other filter in any program. It's not perfect, and it may not catch everything, but to my knowledge, and I haven't tried it very much, it has gotten very, very good at what it does. Yes, sir.
We use it in school. I was telling you last night, I'll tell them, we use it in our school system, and it sends our principal reports at all hours of day and night. You will get reports for every flag thing.
And you guys use it throughout the school system on every Chromebook, right?
Countywide, every Chromebook.
Okay.
And the principal is the recipient of every BARC report. He has to pull through every single one of them.
Oh my goodness. So yes, I will be actually setting up BARC very soon on all three of my children's devices. And there's been a lot of like MDM kind of stuff, multiple device management stuff that has come out in recent years of controlling multiple devices at the same time. But BARC, I think they're well ahead on the artificial intelligence game on doing some of this stuff. Yes, ma'am.
Who developed, where does all this body information go?
That is a very good question and a very pertinent question. Where does that data go? When they scan, and you probably sign an end user license agreement when you sign up for the service. You are paying for it. How much? The school probably pays hundreds of dollars a month probably for it, but on an individual basis, I think it's like $6.99 a month. Now, granted, you are paying for it, but they have to make money on that data somehow, and they're using your child's, and this is just a supposition, I'm just throwing this out there, they're probably using every bit of artificial intelligence and data that they get to strengthen their artificial intelligence, okay? And so again, they're probably, hopefully they're not sharing those things. And that would be one of those things where you read all that lawyer stuff. If it's important to you, if you want to make sure that your child's data stays secure, you read all that lawyer stuff before you sign up for that service. And so what country, it's a United States-based company, in my opinion. I think so. I don't think it's based in, Taiwan or anything like that. So I'm pretty sure it's a United States-based company, but I could be wrong. And of course, they probably have servers everywhere, so they're probably an international company at what point. But again, with any kind, that's one of the biggest things that we can teach our kids. Nothing that we do on these devices is private, ever. Yes, sir.
Our assistant principal's listening online. She said it should have pictures too. It flags pictures as well.
Flags pictures as well. Now, Apple actually introduced a little bit of artificial intelligence into text messaging for child accounts, for sexual predator type stuff and different things like that. And so they actually have a little bit of artificial intelligence running on child accounts now that will flag it, and it will warn you if you have a parental controlled account there through just the text messaging app. But Bark does it on the screen, anything that's on that screen as well. So yeah, it looks like it's going to be powerful. I've got to do a lot more looking into Bark. I tried Bark about 3 years ago, and it was just this really complicated kind of thing, and it didn't set up properly for me, and I kind of didn't go back to it yet. But apparently it has come a long way since then. So it deserves another look. Okay, any comments? Very good question, though. Okay, we talked about Kids Plus. We are at the end. I promise we're getting there, but y'all have had a lot of good questions and comments, so it's your fault that we're going over an hour. YouTube and Netflix. Remember how I said that one of these is really good and one of these is really bad at Parental Controls. Netflix. You have to go to netflix.com/account to change any kind of settings on that, which is, again, not bad, but you need to know that. You got to scroll down to the profile, set ratings for kids, and again, these slides are available on my website. We're just going to kind of go through them real quick. This is an iPad screen. This is what our account here on Netflix looks like. It's Daddy and Mommy because I don't want to see all of her period dramas and romantic comedies. And I will watch them with her sometimes, but not all the time. And then it's got the boys. And so actually we've changed that. It says TV PG and below. It's just TVG now and below. And so you have to scroll down. You have to pick that account. You can go to Parental Controls. And one of the coolest things about Netflix is that you can actually very granularly change those parental controls. I'm not saying that I blocked Dora, but we just don't see Dora anymore on there. I don't know what happened. My 5-year-old all the time, I want to watch Dora, but it's not on here. Well, I don't know. It's just not on Netflix anymore. I'm sorry. It's on Netflix, but we're not watching it. I can't stand it. So anyway, you can actually put restricted titles in there. Now, this comes into play very, very importantly, because about 3 summers ago, actually it was really right before the pandemic or right after the pandemic started. If you had PG or PG-13 movies and shows available to watch, and you put that on your parental controls, the first thing you saw, boom, when you pulled up Netflix was a series called 13 Reasons Why. Now, I heard what was that show about? It was about not just suicide. It was about glorification of suicide. An idea that I do not want my kids to see. They're way too young to watch it, but I don't want my teens. If I had teens in the house, I would not want them to see that at all. You know what I can do on Netflix? I can go to restricted titles and say 13 reasons why I don't ever want to see it. Boom, done. It's actually very, very good. So again, pour through these parental controls on Netflix if you want to really fine tune your experience for your kids. And we have a PIN code. We have an Apple TV and a PIN code. So even if they pull up Netflix and try to get on our profile, it will ask them for a PIN code. We don't have a PIN code on their kids' account because they can get on that with no PIN code whatsoever. So there's our security right there. Any questions? And again, I use Netflix as an example. Some services do it better than others. If you allow your kids to watch Hulu or Amazon Prime Video, guess what you got to do? Go right to their settings and check out what they offer and figure out those settings on an individual basis. It's a lot of work. YouTube, on the other hand, this is a screenshot from my iPad YouTube app. The red box right there on the very top right-hand corner, you just have to click that little, that's my icon, the little CL. You click that, and then it gives you this screen right here, okay? And you think, okay, well, that's not a big deal. Well, you scroll down a little bit on that, and you can see here, and I know it's hard to see on the screen, but it has something on here that says clear watch history, clear search history, and if that's not bad enough, that this is not protected by a password, it says pause watch history, pause search history. That is just inviting a teenager to say, you know, I don't really want my parents to see that I search for this. I don't really want my parents to see that I watched these videos. So I'm just going to pause it for a minute and not make it look so obvious that I deleted all the history. What on earth are they thinking? This is on the app. Not protected by a password. Don't have to put in a PIN code. Nothing. If you're signed into an account, it gives you that option. All you got to do is one tap to get there. That's not okay. And so again, I can't recommend the YouTube app, having it on your phones, having it on your kids' phones at all. Even restricted mode is easy to turn off on here. If you keep scrolling down, you can turn off restricted mode, and it just lets them watch anything that they want. Now, granted, you can't, unless you're really, really looking, you can't really find pornography or really super violent stuff on YouTube, but not all the time. And so again, you need to make sure that you know what your children are watching. You need to know exactly what videos and who they're following, who they're subscribed to, all of those things. Any comments or questions? That just gives you an overall example of some companies, they do it the right way. Some companies do not treat parental controls in the right way at all. And so again, you have to go app by app and check those things. Okay, any questions? We're at the end, I promise. Beware of YouTube Kids. It is sometimes not what you expect. If you can, for YouTube Kids is not squeaky clean either. Make sure that you disable continuous play or play next. What happens is that these videos just keep playing over the course of an hour or two, and the algorithm picks the next video. And you need to make sure that you control what the next video is, not the algorithm. Okay? Yes, sir.
Can I mention what I talked to you about last night?
Sure, absolutely.
I had a young lady in the high school come to me, she's 17, and on her Instagram or Snapchat, I can't remember which one it was, but she had somebody that was phishing, P-H-I-S-I-N-G. They were trying to get information from her and trying to get into a conversation, and they wouldn't leave her alone. And she was concerned about it. And she came to me to ask what she needs to do and everything. And the first thing I asked her, I said, what is your handle or your screen name on that account? And she said, it's Miranda459. I said, you just told anybody that can see your account that you're a girl because you put your name in it. And when you have younger kids that like to put their name, Daisy, and a couple of unicorns on there, you just told them you're a little girl. So it's much better if they don't have an account yet, or if you want them to change an account, get something that does does not tell what gender they are or what age they are. Because if you put Daisy 2010, you just told me Daisy's 12 years old. So be very careful on how they are known on these apps, because they can find out based on what you're putting out there who this person is. Same thing goes with a Facebook account, and they've got all these selfies up there. If they can get in, if it's a public account, they can see what your child looks like and how they are based on what you're putting out there. So be mindful of that when you create these accounts.
And a good thing to notice about that is I know at least on Twitter and on Instagram, you can do something like called a protected account, meaning that so-and-so from Texas or from Bangladesh or whatever, no random person can message you or friend you. They have to request to do that. And so if you have a protected account, that means they cannot see anything but your profile picture and your name. They can't see any of your posts, and they cannot message you unless it requests to, first of all. So again, if you allow your children to be on those, make sure it is a protected account as well. Another thing that you mentioned to me last night, another thing that's popular on iPhones is Airdrop. Airdrop is incredibly useful to share things via Bluetooth from phone to phone. You don't have to go over Wi-Fi or anything like that. However, teenagers and younger kids are using it to share photos or videos or even at sometimes notes or text messages that have illicit things in them, that have inappropriate things in them. What they do is they go inside of their iPhone and they'll rename their iPhone something nonsensical. Instead of it being Chad's iPhone, it'll be Egg Tray 25 or something. It's something weird. And so you get an airdrop from somebody random that you don't have any idea what that's from. So the easy way around that is on parental controls on the iPhone in particular, you turn off airdrop. You don't allow them to have it. And that will not allow them to receive anything, but they cannot send anything as well. It's another thing to mention. Yes, sir.
Another thing I want to add that we see a lot in the school system is, and I can't tell you the list because they change every month. The apps, when I mentioned earlier about freezing the installing the apps, deleting the apps, is there is a very popular app kids use to hide their illicit pictures. It's a calculator.
Yes.
They download that and they hide your pictures in that calculator. That way when mom and dad looks at the phone, they see a calculator. All they got to do is punch in a key code on that calculator, it opens up and all the pictures they're hiding are available to them. So if your phone has a calculator on it from the factory, if your kids want to download a calculator, why? And you really got to research these apps before you let them on the system.
Absolutely. And that very app, one of those apps like it, there were 80 students at a Colorado high school a couple years ago that were suspended, and some of them were expelled because of they had a big ring of kids that were in that sharing completely inappropriate pictures of sometimes themselves. But this is an app that allows, it looks like a normal calculator, and you type in a 4-digit PIN and hit the decimal point and it flips over, and it's got this whole photo vault that's completely independent of your camera roll. It doesn't sync to iCloud. It doesn't do any of that kind of stuff, but you can share those photos back and forth.
Snapchat has that photo vault built into it as well.
And I can't say, I just shrug my shoulders with Snapchat because I don't know what to do about Snapchat. Well, just block it and not let your kids use it. That's what I say. But it's so universal and ubiquitous. So many kids are using it just as their messaging app. And I don't know. I say don't use it, and maybe we'll have a generation of parents that don't let their kids use it. But again, you can't police Snapchat very well. You cannot keep track of Snapchat very well because they don't want you to. Snapchat knows exactly who their target demographic is. They know exactly the 14 to 23-year-old age bracket is exactly who they're going for. And they do everything that they can so that basically they enable your children to hide things from you. And so again, it's an awful app, but at the same time, most kids I know are just harmlessly using it to communicate. So again, it's just one of those things you have to check on if you allow your children to use that app. Very good point. Anything else? Before we get to our last slide, any problematic apps, any things that you have heard of, anything that I did not mention? I'm sure there's a million things I didn't mention, but anything that you want to mention? Yes, ma'am. Okay. I think, yes, I think anything on the screen now correct me if I'm wrong, anything that comes on that screen is going to be scanned. Right, it's still artificial intelligence, it's still going to miss stuff, it's still going to be imperfect, but it's going to, it's going to be 90% of the time, it's going to be effective.
It's gonna send that report, so
you get to decide, yeah. And it's going to mislabel some stuff too. Your kid's going to be looking at I don't know, number blocks or Care Bears or something, and it's going to say, this is nudity. And it's like, okay, the bear wasn't wearing any pants, okay? It's going to say that, and it's going to mess up, and you're going to go, oh, okay. And that's going to be half of it is like, okay, well, this is fine, it's fine. But there again, you don't need to get lax. You need to look at every single one of those notifications and say, okay, what? And then, hey, what is this? What? I saw this on your phone. What is this? You need to confront your kids about it. That's hard. That's awkward. But you got to do it. What's that? Oh. Is there a scale that you can make it like way more intense or a little bit less? Is there kind of I think there's like a kind of a scale that you can put it on as well. If you want to make it super strict or not strict at all, it will flag more stuff and you might have to adjust that. Again, any of these kind of apps that you set up, it's not a set it and forget it thing. You're going to need to tweak these things and control these things and check up on these things once every few weeks to make sure they're working for you. Okay? Yes, sir.
One of the really important parts that we have to recognize as a congregation raising these kids together to live lives of Christ is that so much of what we're dealing with is addiction. We've seen how addiction can impact our brothers or sisters, our parents, our grandparents, our kids, whether you're 9, 19, or 59, that power of addiction can create split personalities. Who they want you to believe they are, and who they are when they believe they have a massive anonymity. And when our kids are dealing with these issues, we've got to be evidence-based. And we've got to take a mentality that, Lord willing, this isn't what I hope it is, or what I fear it may be. But we've got to look deep, we've got to work with other people when these kind of things do come to light. And I say that especially from a school perspective. We've got great kids who sometimes get caught up in terrible things. Mm-hmm. And we have to work through that together. But the worst thing we can do is take a not my baby mentality. There's no way my kid. Because having been through so many of those terrible conversations, we have to recognize the power of addiction. And that's it, trying to work through it.
I've had dozens and dozens of parents come to me, and the first thing that they say, can you guess? I never thought my child would do this. And again, I'm not saying you have bad kids. Kids are kids. They're going to mess up. They're going to make bad decisions. They're not adults. They don't have decades of experience behind them to make those decisions most of the time. We have to be, what I preached last night, we have to be their protectors. And we have to do everything we can to help them along their journey. Okay? Excellent points. Anything else you'd like to add? Okay. He should be up here teaching this. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. So Circle used to be run by Disney. It used to be Circle by Disney. And I actually had that, I recommended that at one point. It was very good. But a lot of people have kind of soured on it because it's not actively developed anymore. And the device is good. You buy this, it's like an Eero device. You buy a dedicated Wi-Fi router and it's got all these parental controls built in and things like that. And a lot of people, what they don't like is they don't like Disney owning their data because Disney pours through that. They sell that data to advertisers and all those other different things. Everybody's selling to somebody. If you buy an Eero device, well, guess who owns them? Amazon. And guess what? I can't guarantee that Amazon's not getting all your data when you buy something on Amazon or you go through your browsing history. I can't guarantee that. I don't know that. But I can tell you that if you use an obvious service, like I said last night, if you use Gmail for your email, guess who's reading your email? Google. So again, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Somebody's paying for it. Most of the time, you are paying for it with your data. And Circle by Disney, again, I don't see it in the stores anymore. That's why I kind of dropped it and I don't talk about it anymore. Used to be a very good service, but that was several years ago. It's a good point, though. Any other questions, comments? Okay. I think we're right here at the end. Yes, this is the last slide. If you are just at a loss and you cannot figure out what to do, your carrier, AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, can be very helpful, okay? Again, don't walk into a store and try to talk to them about some of these things because those are mainly salespeople. Call your carrier, contact your carrier, and you can do any of these things. You can block numbers. You can block numbers from texting. If you have trouble, if you've had a lot of trouble with your child and texting on an iPhone in particular, all you've got to do is go turn off iMessage. And that defaults back to the text messaging SMS system, and that logs everything. You can get a complete transcript of every single text message that was made on the SMS system through your carrier if you want to. If you have iMessage enabled, that doesn't happen. Now, iMessage gives you the blue bubbles, and kids are really, it's a really big thing for kids, believe it or not, if you have a green bubble or if you have a blue bubble, right? And the joke is, oh, you have a green bubble. You couldn't afford an iPhone, could you? Like, it's just that kind of, that's the joke. And that's funny, but it's kind of really not. And at the same time, you have to understand that you can do a lot of things through your carrier, okay? You can limit your data. You can actually turn off data at one point. If it's gotten to that point, and that's one of your last resorts, you can actually just turn off data on the line, on the account itself. And so they can be very, very helpful with certain things for sure. Okay, any questions? Have I completely scrambled your brains? Have I made you think? Has this been helpful? I'm so very glad to have been here with you. Thank you so much for your time and your attention and your questions. Again, let's go ahead and if we could go back to my first slide with my contact info on there. I'm going to say a prayer for us very, very quickly, and we're going to end. You can go to my website, and you can email me here for anything that we would have. Any problems you have, anything that you come upon, I would love to hear from you. I will tell you, in 1 week, I'm doing a Tech for Seniors. The seniors at Graymere they requested 2 or 3 classes on technology. And so I imagine I'm going to be extremely busy going to people's houses and fixing their computers after that. So, yes, ma'am, we are, I take it back. We're not live streaming, but we are recording it, and it will be on our YouTube channel. So you can go to youtube.com/Graymere, Graymere. Questions I can answer, please get in touch. Let's have a word of prayer. Let's end our workshop. Is that okay, Ray? Is it okay? Let's have a word of prayer and end our workshop, and then we'll be dismissed. Dear Lord, we thank you so much for everything that you have given us. Lord, we thank you so much for our families, our church family, the leaders here. We thank you so much for our physical blood families, Lord, our sons, our daughters, our grandchildren. We thank you so much for all the blessings that we have. And Lord, help us to do everything that we can to use this technology for the glorification of you, to use this technology in the proper way that it was designed to be used. Lord, we thank you so much for the blessing of this technology to be able to communicate and entertain ourselves and inform ourselves and spread the gospel, Lord. We'd ask you to help us be as relentless and intentional as we can be to protect our children and grandchildren as much as we can. Lord, help us to realize that the responsibility lies with us. The responsibility for this new digital generation is going to rely largely on our shoulders, on how we raise our children and our grandchildren. Lord, help us to every day raise them in the nurture and the admonition of you. Help them always, and help us always to point our children and our grandchildren to you and your Son. Lord, we thank you so much for your Son. We thank you so much for his sacrifice. And we thank you so much for everything and all the blessings that we have in him. And it's in his name that we pray this prayer. Amen. Thank y'all so very much. And you are dismissed.
Thank you again, Chad.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate y'all having me.
How you go back home?